So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can create this short reel in DaVinci Resolve. Now let's drag in a fusion composition, right click and change the clip duration to. Now let's head over to this composition and add in a background. Now for this, I'm going to change the color and this is the color code that I'm using. Now let's connect the background with the media out and head back to the main timeline. Now we need to create a duplicate for this, and the way that we can do is by pressing Alt on the keyboard and dragging the mouse up. So this will create a copy for the composition. Now let's head over to this composition, the one that we just created. And right now we have this background, but later on I'm going to change the alpha to 0 because we don't need this. We don't need it to be the background of the video. We already have created it, but for reference, I'm going to leave it as it is now. While you have your background selected, make sure you press this merge 3 times. All right, now let's drag in our images. So I have these 2 images right here and let's connect them. And let's also add transform nodes for each of these. Now for this one, the background, let's change these to minus 0.05. And I'm also going to change the size to 1.42, something like this. Right, so 1.15 works for me. And for this one, I'm going to change this to minus 0.1 and the size to 1.7, like this. Now I'm going to add the color corrector for each of these. So let's add them. Make sure you have the node selected while you press this color corrector so that this will get added to your image. Now for this one at the background, let me just zoom in and change the color a little bit so that this matches the background. And I'm going to do the same thing for this image as well. So slightly like this. All right, perfect. Now I'm going to add this ellipse and a background. The color for this will be white, and let's connect them. And in the ellipse, make sure you unselect solid and change the border width to 0.02. Right click on your width and select expression, connect it with the height and change the height to 0.85. And now you can move this right here. Now while you have your background selected, press Control Space and search for glow. Change the glow size to 100 and keep the glow at 0.8. All right, now let's go ahead and add in our text. So I'm going to drag this text over here and let's type in this, and I'm going to be using the font Futura Bold, and let's change the size to 0.15. Now let's go ahead, connect it with the merge 3. So make sure you don't select your merge 4 while moving it, only select text node while you move this up like this. And now let's go ahead, add in another text. And I'm just going to copy the text one, Control C, and then right click and paste settings. And now I'm going to connect this to merge 4. Over here, I'm going to bring this down and change the text. I'm also going to change the font to extra bold, and let's change the size to 0.33 like this. Now I'm also going to change the color for the text. So this is the color code that I'm going to be using for both of these, like this. Now select your text one and press Control Space. Search for glow for this one as well, and do the same thing for text 2 as well. Now, while you have your glow selected, change the glow size to 100 and the glow to 0.7. You can copy the settings from here. You can press Control C and then right click and paste settings. All right, now let's create some animation for the text. So first of all, select your text one and go over to 10 frames. Now over here in shading, create a keyframe at opacity and change this to 0. Now over here at 12 frames, let's move this back at 1. I'm going to do the same thing for text 2. I'm going to start at 13 frames, as you can see over here. So let's go over to shading, create a keyframe at opacity, change this to 0, and then at 15, I'm going to change this back to 1. So if you play this, this is how it will look. Now let's go ahead, add in some smoke. So for this, I'm going to drag in this fast noise and connect it with the merge 5. Now over here, we're going to change the detail to 0.7, change the contrast to 0.7, the brightness to minus 0.6, keep the scale at 2, angle at 0, change the seed to 90 and the seed rate to 0.1. Now let's go ahead, add in this rectangle and connect it with the merge 6. Now for this one over here, I'm going to change the soft edge all the way to 0.2 and the width to 1. And I'm also going to change the center to 0.003, like this. So if you play this, here you can see we have some smoke coming in. All right, now we're going to do something a little bit technical, which is to create a 3D effect for this. Now for this one, I'm going to add a image plane 3D node and also go ahead add this merge 3D node. And while you have your merge 3D selected, press Control Space and search for render and select this render 3D. All right, now connect this merge 6 to the image plane and the render 3D to media out. And here you will see that nothing actually happened except for that our clip now is in a 3D way. So let me give you an example. If you go over to image plane and over in transform, you can now move this in a 3D rotation. All right. So go over to image plane and then add 15 over here, 15 frames, create keyframes at all of these three in the translation, X, Y, and Z. Now over here, add 0, change the Y to 0.3 and the Z to 1, like this. And now let's go over to 25 frames and change the Y to minus 0.5, like this. Okay, so one thing, make sure that over here at 15, we create a keyframe for Z as well, but this time change this to 0. And now if you will play this, this is how it will look. Now select your image plane and go over to spline. Over here, make sure that you select your image plane only. So first of all, let's go ahead, select the Y offset. And from here, select these keyframes and hit S on the keyboard. And then these two as well, and then S on the keyboard. Now over here, we're going to slightly move this in like this. So if you play this, this is how it looks. And we're going to do the same thing for the Z offset as well. So over here, make sure that this was at 1. So like this. And let's select the keyframes, hit S on the keyboard and slightly move this in as well, like this. So this is how it looks. Okay, now let's make sure you press Control Space and search for directional light. Connect this with the merge 3D and make sure you go over to render 3D and select lighting and shadows as well. Now head back to the directional light and over here at 0, let's go over to transform and create some keyframes at rotation. So first of all, I'm going to create a keyframe at X and Y and change the X to 8 and Y to 14. Now go over at 5 frames and change the X to 1. Go over to 10 frames and change the X to 9. Now go over to 13 frames and change the X to 3. Then at 15, change the X to 10. Now over here at 16, we're going to create a keyframe at Y and leave this at 40. Then go over at 20 and change this to 80, like this. So now if we play this, this is how it will look. All right, next let's move on. And while you have your 3D selected, we're going to add two more text nodes, and we can also add two merge nodes as well. So let's connect them like this. Now in the text 3, I'm going to type in this text, and let's change the font to Futura, and also I'm going to change the size to 0.18. Now let's head over to text 4, and over here I'm going to add some dashes. So I'm going to add 4 dashes for now, like this. And let's copy them and paste them a few more times. So 2 times now we are at 8, and we paste them another time, we are at 12, then another time, then we are at 16, and now we are at 20. And two more times, so we will be all the way to 28. So these are 28 altogether. Now change the size for this to 0.4, and head over to layout and change the type to path. Now over here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and create a path around this text that we have, like this. Make sure you connect them like this. Make sure that this is a rectangle sort of shape and aligned properly. So I'll just quickly do that. Go back to text and change this to light as well. And now let's head back to path over here. All right, so you can use this tracking to make sure that this is aligned. So this looks okay for now. And this is up to you. You will have to do this accordingly to how it fits your text. Because when we create this path, we do it manually, so we have to adjust it manually as well. So this works for me. All right, now let's head over to 15 frames, and over here at text 3, go over to layout and create a keyframe at center. Now change the Y to 1.12. And now let's go over to 24 and change the Y to 0.65. Now let's head over to text 4 and at 15, let's create a keyframe at layout as well over here. And this time we're going to change the Y to 1.05. Then at 24, we're going to change this to 0.6. But let me just move this slightly up. So somewhere around 0.628, somewhere around here, like this, or 0.63. That's up to you. You can adjust this accordingly. So if you play this right now, here you can see. Okay, so one thing you will see that this is showing over here. So we can remove this by going over to 15 and slightly moving this up. All right. Now let's play this. Perfect. All right, now let's go over to text 3 and right click over here in the text box and select follower. Now you will see a modifier tab opened up over here. Go over to this, change the order from left to right, keep this delay between each character as it is, and change the delay to 0.1. Now go over to transform, and from here select the size, and then at 20 over here, create keyframes for both of these and change this to 0. Now go over at 25 and change them back to 1. So if you play this, this is how it will look. All right, now make sure you select your merge 8 and add in this transform node right here. Then go over at 25 frames and create a keyframe at center. Keep the Y and X at 0.5 and also create a keyframe at size and angle as well. Keep all of these settings as they are. Now go over to 30 frames and change the Y of the center to 0.4. Then go over to size and change this to 0.8 and change the angle to 26. Now also go over to settings and from here select this motion blur and change the quality to 5. So if you play this, this is how it will look. All right, now we're going to add another merge node over here and let's add in an ellipse and also add in this background. Connect the ellipse to the background and the background to the merge line. Now over here at ellipse, go over to 25 frames and create a keyframe at width and height and change both of these to 0. Then at 27, change this to 2, both of these to 2. And make sure you select this, set this soft edge to 0.2 as well. So if you play this, right now this is how it will look, but make sure you select your merge 9, go over to apply mode and change this to screen. So this is how it will look. All right, now that we have this done, let's go over to the background that we had. We can now change this to the alpha to 0, and you can also change the color to black as well, but I'm going to just keep this at it, as it is now. So now if we head back to the main timeline, here's how you will see this is how it looks. Now over here, you will see that we are getting some empty space over here. So we need to remove this. What we can do is just head back to the Fusion composition. And just so that we don't get any problems, I'm just going to change the color to black from here. Now over here in the image plane, let's go over to the spline at 14. So at 0, as you can see, the Z offset was at 1. But here you can see this is moving out now, and we don't want that. So what we can do here is that make sure you unselect all of these. Only select the Z rotation from here, and let's see what the problem is. So move both of these out, and so here you can see this is where the problem is. And if we increase this, so here you can see our problem is solved. So if you have any of this sort of a problem, you can always go over to the keyframes over here in the spline section and play around with this and adjust the movement according to how you want. All right, now let's head back to the main timeline and see how this looks. Perfect. All right, now we're going to add another fusion composition, but this time let's change the clip duration to just 20 over here and change this to 0 and move this all the way to the end like this. So now let's head over to this fusion composition, and this time I'm going to drag in this image, and this is just the image for the YouTube channel. And now let's add this image plane. Connect this, and while you have your image plane selected, press Ctrl space and search for render 3D. Now you can connect it with the media out, and this is how it will look. So let's go over to the image plane, and from here we're going to change some settings. So if you go over to transform, in the translation, change the X to 0.029. Keep the Y at 0, but change the Z to 0.48. And the rotation X, I'm going to keep this at 0, but the Y, I'm going to change this at 20.9, and then Z at 5.2. All right, and now I'm going to unselect this log over here, and I'm going to change the Y to 1.5. Right, and this is just because my image is a little bit smaller, but you don't have to do it if your image is a bit large. All right, now I'm going to drag in this ellipse and connect it with the render 3D. Now for this ellipse, I'm going to change first of all, let me change the soft edge to 0.2 and then the width to 1.6 and the height to 0.8, like this. Now over here at image plane, let's go back to the image plane and then at material, I'm going to create a keyframe at 2 at opacity. Then change this to 0. Then all the way to 7 frames, I'm going to change this back to 1. So this is how it will look. All right, now let's add a text highlight. So I'm going to drag in this background and this rectangle, connect them then to the render 3D. Now over here in the rectangle, I'm going to change the width to 0.7 and the height to 0.1. And I'm going to change the corner radius to 0.11. Now I'm going to go over to the merge node of this, and then at 0 frames, I'm going to add this blend, add a keyframe at blend at 0, and then at 3, I'm going to move this in like this. Now let's add in our text. So let's connect it right here. I'm going to type in a text and then the font, once again Futura, but this will be at heavy, and the size, I'm going to change this to 0.12. So this fits in the background highlight that we have over here. All right, now I'm going to select the merge tool and click on this brightness. And over here, right click to on lift and then go over to modify width, then select shake. Then go over to the modifiers tab, change the smoothness to 1, keep the minimum at 0, and change the maximum to 0.134. So if you play this, this is the kind of effect that we will get. All right, now let's see how this looks. Okay, so one thing for the text as well, we need to create a keyframe at shading at opacity, then at 0, we're going to move this at 0. So if you play this, this is how it looks. Now select your brightness and then click on transform, and we're going to create a transform node. And we're going to move this. So let's go over to 0 frames, and over here, we're going to create a keyframe at size and angle. And also go over to 19, create keyframe at size and angle. But the one at 0, we're going to change the size to 1.5 and then the angle to 40. So if we play this, this is how it will look. Okay, so one mistake we made is that we had to keep the size at 1.5. So let's play this now. Perfect. This looks much better. But the ellipse over here, as you can see in the beginning, right here, we want to cover this as much as possible. So I'm going to reduce the width a little bit at 1.2 like this. So this works for me. One final thing is go over to settings, and once again, let's use this motion blur at quality 5. All right, so let's head back to our main timeline. So there we have it. Let's play this, and this is how it looks. So one thing that you will notice over here is that this is this background that we had over here for this fusion composition. We can always just change this, or you can say fade this out so that this moves out of the screen like this. Okay, so this is it for this video. I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you in the next one.